This story is titled, "My Mom Always Said I Was the Backup Kid." At her funeral, my sister gave a speech calling me a mistake. I stayed silent, but the will wasn't. Now she's suing me for what was left entirely in my name. I never thought I'd be writing this, but after yesterday's certified letter from Sarah's lawyer, I need to get this off my chest. I'm Jake, 31M, and my sister Sarah, 38F, has always been the golden child. Growing up, I was constantly reminded that I was the accident the backup kid Mom and Dad had when Sarah was already 7, just in case something happened to their perfect firstborn. Mom never tried to hide it. She'd casually drop it into conversations at family gatherings, laughing it off like it was some cute story. "Oh, Jake was our insurance baby. We already had our perfect Sarah, but you never know." She'd pat my head while everyone chuckled, and I'd force a smile, dying inside. Sarah would beam, soaking up the implied compliment while shooting me that look, the one that said, "Remember your place." I learned to live with it. I built my life away from their shadow, became an accountant, found success on my own terms. I called on holidays, visited when expected, and kept the peace. Sarah followed Mom's footsteps into law, married a lawyer, rich, 40M, and gave Mom the grandkids she wanted. Everything was following the script they'd written. Then Mom got sick. Pancreatic cancer. It was aggressive, and within 3 months of diagnosis, we were planning her funeral. Dad had passed 5 years earlier from a heart attack, so it was just Sarah and me handling everything. I took time off work to help with Mom's care, while Sarah was too busy with her practice to do more than occasional weekend visits. The funeral was yesterday. Sarah gave the eulogy, and I sat there, my anger building as she wove a narrative about being Mom's true legacy. Then came the moment that made me snap. She actually called me Mom's mistake in front of everyone, wrapping it in a joke about how even Mom's mistakes turned out okay in the end. The attendees laughed awkwardly, but I saw the looks of pity. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up right there in the middle of her speech. "Is this really the time to air your superiority complex, Sarah? While we're burying our mother?" My voice was shaking. "I spent the last 3 months by her bedside while you were too busy to even return her calls. But please, tell everyone else what a mistake I am." The church went dead silent. Sarah's face turned red, and her husband Rich started to stand up, but I wasn't finished. You know what's funny? Mom had a lot to say to me in those final weeks. Things you might find very interesting. I immediately regretted saying that last part. I hadn't planned to reveal anything about our private conversation, especially not like this. The meeting with Mom's lawyer this morning explained everything. And now, seeing Sarah's lawsuit threat sitting on my kitchen counter, I realized this is far from over. She never could stand not being in control. After my outburst at the funeral, I sat alone in my car for a while, thinking about all the checks Mom and Dad had written for Sarah's law school while I worked part-time jobs to pay for my accounting degree. The designer clothes they bought her for court appearances while I shopped at thrift stores. The down payment for her first house while I lived in a cramped studio apartment. It never bothered me back then. I'd accepted my place as the backup kid. We gathered at Thompson and Associates an hour later. Sarah and Rich sat across from me in their perfectly tailored designer suits, probably worth more than everything I owned. I was still wearing the only black suit I had, the one I'd bought off the clearance rack 3 months ago when Mom first got sick. The small conference room felt suffocating with unspoken accusations. I kept thinking about those final weeks with Mom. The way she'd grip my hand during her lucid moments, how she'd apologize for being so blind. How she'd ask me to tell her about my life, my dreams, my struggles, things she'd never asked about before. Sometimes she'd cry, touching my face like she was seeing me for the first time. "You look so tired, Jake," she'd say, noticing the dark circles under my eyes from sleeping in the hospital chair. Mr. Thompson, 70M, walked in carrying a thick folder. Sarah immediately straightened up, that familiar confident smile playing on her lips. She'd already told everyone at the reception how she'd be taking over everything. The lake house where we spent summers, the family business Dad had built from nothing. Mom promised me, she'd said repeatedly, shooting me meaningful looks. "Before we begin," Mr. Thompson said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to note that Margaret made changes to her will 2 weeks before her passing. She was of sound mind, and I personally witnessed her decisions. The will reading felt like a dream. Sarah getting only jewelry and photos. Me getting everything else, the lake house, the business, all of it." The room spun as Mr. Thompson read out the details. I wasn't hearing dollar amounts. I was hearing Mom's voice from that last conversation. "I've watched you both grow up, and I finally see clearly now. You deserved so much more, Jake. I'm so sorry it took me this long. Sarah's scream snapped me back to reality. This is ridiculous. I'm the one who made something of myself. I'm the successful one. He's nothing but a basic accountant. Her words hung in the air, eerily similar to Mom's old comparisons. There's one final stipulation, Mr. Thompson said gravely. If any beneficiary contests this will, they forfeit their entire inheritance to the other surviving sibling. Sarah's designer handbag hit the floor as she stood up. You did this, she snarled at me. You manipulated her when she was dying. This isn't over. Rich was already making calls to their law firm. I just sat there, feeling a complex mix of emotions I couldn't name. Mom's final gift wasn't about the money. It was her acknowledgement of all the years of inequality, of overlooking me, of making me feel less than. But as I watched Sarah's rage, I knew this recognition would come at a terrible price. She'd never let this go. She'd never accept being the backup child. Looking at the hatred in my sister's eyes, I realized that Mom's last act of love would probably destroy what little was left of our family. And somehow, that hurt more than all those years of being the mistake combined. The call started at 6 a.m. the morning after the will reading. I was barely awake when Sarah's number flashed on my screen for the first time. You manipulative little snake, she hissed before I could even say hello. Do you really think you're going to get away with this? That was supposed to be my inheritance. I let her rant for a few minutes before hanging up. 10 minutes later, Rich called. Be reasonable, Jake. You know this isn't what your mother really wanted. Sarah's been managing the family business dealings for years. You don't know the first thing about running a company. By noon, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. Sarah alternated between threats and attempts at guilt tripping. You've ruined my children's future, followed by, I'll make sure everyone knows how you manipulated Mom when she was dying. Then, my lawyer says we have a solid case for undue influence, and you'll spend every penny fighting this in court. I was about to block their numbers when Sarah's next message made my blood run cold. Remember when you had that DUI incident in college that Dad helped cover up? Imagine if the state bar where you're licensed as a CPA found out about that. I had to pull over on my way to work, my hands shaking. That DUI charge had been dismissed. Dad had pulled strings with an old friend. I'd never had another incident, but Sarah was right. It could cause problems with my professional license if it came to light. The breaking point came that evening. Sarah showed up at my apartment unannounced, mascara running down her face. Take the $10,000, she said, trying to push past me into my apartment. Take your $10,000 and sign everything else over to me. That's what Mom originally planned. You know it is. When I wouldn't let her in, she started screaming in the hallway. You were nothing but a backup plan. A mistake. You really think Mom changed her mind about that in 3 months? She was on heavy medications. My elderly neighbor Mrs. Chen poked her head out, and I could hear other doors opening. Sarah, go home, I said firmly, trying to close my door. She stuck her foot in the way. You have until tomorrow to accept the deal, she snarled. After that, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to tell everyone how you took advantage of our dying mother. How you manipulated her when she was too weak to think straight. How you never visited until you realized there was money to be had. The irony of that last accusation, when I was the one who'd spent nights sleeping in a hospital chair while she was too busy to visit, wasn't lost on me. But as I finally managed to close and lock my door, Sarah's parting words echoed through the hallway. You were never meant to have any of this, Jake. And I'm going to make sure you end up with nothing. I slid down against my door, listening to her heels click away down the hall. My phone buzzed again. Rich this time. Sarah's being generous with her offer. Think carefully about the consequences of refusing. Looking at my phone screen, I realized I needed to start documenting everything. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. Sarah was out for blood. I sent Sarah a clear text message the next morning. The answer is no. I won't be taking the $10,000. Mom made her choice, and I'm respecting her wishes. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. That evening, driving home from work, I noticed my brake pedal felt strange. It went almost to the floor before responding. I managed to pull into a mechanic's shop, my hands shaking. The mechanic's face turned serious as he looked under my car. Someone's tampered with your brake line. See these cuts? They're fresh. You're lucky you noticed it when you did. I felt sick. The only people who had access to my parking spot at work were other tenants in the building, including Rich's cousin Marcus, who I'd seen lurking around my car that morning but hadn't thought anything of it. I called the police right away and filed a report, my voice trembling as I explained everything. The will, the threats, the suspicious timing. Officer Reynolds, 42F took detailed notes. Document everything, she advised. Set up security cameras. And don't stay at your apartment tonight. She helped me file for an emergency restraining order against Sarah, Rich, and Marcus. I checked into a hotel under a different name, jumping at every sound. Around midnight, my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Brake lines are just the beginning. Accidents happen all the time. Take the deal while you can still walk away. The next morning, I installed security cameras at my apartment. I hadn't even finished setting them up when my neighbor Mrs. Chen knocked on my door. "Two people were asking about you earlier," she said nervously. "A man I didn't recognize and a woman who looked like your sister. They wanted to know when you usually get home." I showed Mrs. Chen photos of Sarah and Rich. She confirmed it was them. That's when I noticed my door lock had scratches around it. Someone had tried to get in while I was gone. The police added attempted breaking and entering to their report. Officer Reynolds called me personally. "We're taking this very seriously now. Keep a detailed log of everything. Photos, texts, emails, witnesses. And Jake, be careful. People can do desperate things when millions are involved." I started varying my routes to work, checking under my car every morning, looking over my shoulder constantly. The security camera caught Marcus trying my door again at 2 a.m. When confronted by police, he claimed he was just checking if I was okay. But the screwdriver they found in his pocket told a different story. Sarah's texts became more erratic. "You brought this on yourself," followed by, "I'm trying to protect you from what's coming." Rich's law firm sent formal letters demanding I cease and desist from slandering their clients, even though I hadn't told anyone except the police what was happening. Last night, I woke up to the smell of smoke. Someone had shoved burning papers under my door, copies of Mom's will with "Give it up" scrawled in red. The fire alarm went off, and the sprinklers prevented any real damage. But the message was clear. They weren't going to stop. I'm writing this from another hotel room, my hands still shaking. The police have opened a formal investigation, but they warned me that proving who's behind everything might be difficult. Officer Reynolds suggested witness protection might be necessary if things escalate further. The bitter irony isn't lost on me. Mom's final act of love might end up getting me killed. But as terrified as I am, I keep thinking about her final weeks, how she squeezed my hand and said she was finally seeing clearly. I can't betray that. I won't. But every time my phone buzzes, I wonder if it's another threat. Every dark car that drives past makes me flinch. This inheritance was supposed to be Mom's way of making things right. Instead, it might be what destroys what's left of my life. After a week of living in hotels and constantly looking over my shoulder, I decided enough was enough. I texted Sarah, "Let's meet. Just us. No lawyers, no Rich, no games. The coffee shop on 5th Street, 2 p.m. tomorrow. Public place, security cameras everywhere." She agreed surprisingly quickly. "Fine. Don't bring anyone." I arrived early, chose a table in clear view of the security cameras, and ordered nothing. I wasn't stupid enough to drink anything around her right now. When Sarah walked in, she looked different. Her usually perfect appearance was slightly disheveled, dark circles under her eyes visible despite her makeup. "You look terrible," she said, sitting down. "Same old Sarah, always going for the jab." "Yeah, attempted murder will do that to you," I replied calmly, watching her face. She flinched slightly. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her eyes darted away. "I'm here to make you a better offer. 20,000. That's double dash." "Stop," I cut her off. "Just stop. You tried to have me killed, Sarah. The brake lines, the break-in attempts, the fire. I have police reports for all of it. They're building a case. Is this really what you want? To end up in prison because you couldn't stand that Mom finally chose me for once?" Her face twisted. "Chose you? She was drugged and dying. You manipulated her when she was weak. I'm the one who dedicated my life to making this family proud. You were just there. The backup. The mistake." "I was there," I said quietly. "That's the point. I was there when Mom was dying. Where were you, Sarah? Too busy with your perfect life to spend time with our dying mother. I was running the family business. The business you now think you can just take over without dash." "I've seen the books," I interrupted. Her face went pale. "Yeah, Mom gave me access in those final weeks. I know about the unauthorized transfers, Sarah. The shell companies. The consulting fees you've been paying yourself. Did you think nobody would ever check?" She gripped her designer purse so tight her knuckles went white. "You don't understand business, Dash. I'm an accountant. Numbers are literally my job. Mom figured it out, didn't she? That's why she changed the will. Not because I manipulated her, but because she finally saw who you really are. Tears started running down her face, ruining her mascara. You have no idea what it's like, she whispered. The pressure. Always having to be perfect. The golden child. Do you know how much debt we're in? The lifestyle everyone expects. So you started stealing from the family business, I finished. And now you're trying to kill me to cover it up. I didn't. She stammered, but we both knew the truth. I pulled out a thick envelope. Here's my offer. Stop the attacks. Call off Rich and Marcus. I'll give you 1 year to quietly pay back everything you took from the business. Do that, and I'll never tell anyone what you did. Or we can let the police finish their investigation. Your choice. She stared at the envelope, her hands shaking. Why would you give me that chance? Because despite everything, you're still my sister. And Mom would have wanted me to give you one last chance to do the right thing. Sarah broke down completely then, sobbing in the middle of the coffee shop. People were staring, but I didn't care. I got up to leave, pausing beside her chair. You have 24 hours to decide. And Sarah? If anything else happens to me, the police get everything I found. I may be the backup kid, but I'm not stupid. Walking out, I felt lighter somehow. For the first time since Mom died, I was finally standing up for myself. Not just surviving in their shadow, but stepping into the light. 23 hours after our coffee shop meeting, Sarah texted me. I want to make things right. Can we have dinner? Just us. That little Italian place near Riverside Bridge. 8 p.m. tonight. Please, Jake. For Mom. For Mom. She knew exactly what buttons to push. Part of me, the little brother who'd spent his whole life hoping for his big sister's approval, wanted to believe her. Wanted to think that maybe, just maybe, she'd chosen family over money. I stared at the text for a long time, remembering all the times I'd forgiven her growing up. The time she told everyone at school I was adopted. When she accidentally destroyed my college acceptance letter so Mom and Dad wouldn't find out I got into a better school than she had. The way she'd always twist things to make me look bad and herself the victim. But something felt off about her choice of location. The restaurant she suggested was in a secluded area near Riverside Bridge, surrounded by empty warehouses. Not the kind of place you choose for a reconciliation dinner. My hand shook as I dialed Officer Reynolds. The restaurant's been closed for months, she confirmed after checking. And we've been monitoring your sister's calls. She booked 3 men to take care of a problem tonight. Same area. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Even after I'd offered her a way out, she was still plotting to kill me. Her own brother. I thought about Mom's final days, how she'd gripped my hand and apologized for not protecting me from Sarah sooner. She'd always known what Sarah was capable of. The police set up a sting operation. I agreed to play along, wearing a wire. At 7:55 p.m., I pulled into the empty parking lot. Sarah was waiting by her car, wearing black, appropriate for what she had planned, I guess. Jake, she called out, smiling that same fake smile she'd used our whole lives. I'm so glad you came. I've been thinking about what you said. She kept talking as she tried to lead me toward the bridge. That's when we heard the sirens. 3 men were caught hiding behind the abandoned buildings. They quickly confessed. Sarah had hired them to make me disappear over the bridge rail. Rich was arrested at his office, where he'd been setting up their alibis. I watched from a police car as they handcuffed my sister. She didn't cry this time. She just stared at me with pure hatred as they read her rights. I should have made sure you never existed in the first place, she spat. You ruined everything. No, Sarah, I said quietly, though I don't know if she heard me. You did that yourself. Later that night, going through Mom's old papers, I found a letter she'd written to me years ago, but never sent. My dearest Jake, it began, I've watched Sarah torment you your whole life, and my greatest shame is that I let it happen. I told myself she would grow out of it, that it was normal sibling rivalry. But I see now there's something broken in her that can't be fixed. Protecting her didn't help, it only made her worse. I hope someday you can forgive me for not seeing it sooner. I cried then, really cried, for the mother who'd finally seen the truth but died before she could make it right. For the little boy who'd spent his life being the backup kid. For the sister I'd never really had. Sarah and Rich are facing multiple charges: attempted murder, conspiracy, embezzlement. The family business is mine now, along with everything else. But sitting alone in Mom's empty house, surrounded by the wealth that drove my sister to try to kill me, all I can think is, Some things can never be fixed. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. And sometimes, the backup plan turns out to be the right one all along. 2 weeks after Sarah's arrest, I visited her at the county jail. I don't know what I expected, maybe some sign of remorse, a glimmer of the sister I used to look up to. The guard led me to the visitation room, and there she was, orange jumpsuit replacing her designer clothes, her perfectly manicured hands now bare. "I needed to see you," I said through the phone. To explain, she just stared at me, her eyes cold. "Sarah, everything I did, going to the police, wearing the wire, I had to do it to survive. You were trying to kill me, but you're still my sister. We grew up together. Remember when you used to help me with my homework? Or when you stood up for me that time in middle school when those kids were bullying me?" She leaned forward, her face twisted with contempt. "You want to talk about memories? Here's one. Remember when Mom and Dad bought me my first car for graduation, and you cried because you felt left out? That's who you've always been. Weak, jealous, pathetic. Always wanting what was mine. Sarah, please dash. You think you've won?" She pressed her hand against the glass. "My lawyer says we have proof Mom wasn't competent when she changed the will. The medication she was on, her mental state, we're going to prove you manipulated her. And then everything will be mine, just like it was supposed to be. This isn't about winning," I tried to explain. "I just want Dash." She cut me off by spitting at the glass between us. "You're not my brother. You're nothing but a mistake Mom and Dad made. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you really are." As if to prove her point, I received the lawsuit papers the next day. 20 pages of legal accusations. Undue influence, manipulation of a mentally compromised person, fraudulent interference with inheritance. Sarah's lawyers were demanding the will be invalidated. Attached was a personal note from Sarah. "Hope you enjoyed your little victory. By the time I'm done, you'll wish you'd taken the $10,000. I sat in my car outside the jail for a long time, holding those papers, thinking about all the years I spent trying to earn her love. All the times I convinced myself that deep down, she must care about me. That blood had to mean something. But sitting there, I finally accepted the truth. Sometimes family isn't about blood. Sometimes it's about choices. And Sarah had made hers long ago. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I started the car and drove to Mom's lake house, my lake house now. Looking out over the water, I remembered Mom's words during those final days. "Don't let her make you feel small anymore, Jake. You deserve to stand tall." Sarah's lawsuit doesn't scare me. I have the medical records showing Mom was competent, the witnesses who saw her lucid and clear in her decisions, and now evidence of Sarah's attempts to kill me for the inheritance. But the fact that she's still trying to destroy me, even from jail, still hurts in a way I can't quite explain. Maybe some people are just broken. Maybe some relationships can't be fixed. And maybe being the backup kid taught me something valuable after all, how to stand on my own, even when the people who should love you the most try to tear you down. The courtroom fell silent as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. I sat there, watching Sarah in her perfectly pressed jail uniform, still somehow managing to look like she was above it all. That was about to change. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of embezzlement, we find the defendant guilty. With each guilty, Sarah's perfect facade cracked a little more. But it was the inheritance ruling that finally broke her. The judge spoke firmly. Regarding the petition to invalidate Margaret Chen's will, the court finds no evidence of undue influence or diminished capacity. Medical records clearly show Mrs. Chen was lucid and competent when making her final decisions. Multiple witnesses, including her primary physician and the hospital staff, have testified to her clear state of mind. The will stands as written. That's when Sarah finally shattered. She started laughing, a horrible, broken sound that turned into screaming. "You don't understand. I was supposed to have it all. I was the good one. I did everything right." The courtroom erupted in chaos as Sarah collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. "Mom promised me. She promised. It was all supposed to be mine." As they led her away for sentencing, she caught my eye. For the first time, I didn't see the confident, controlling sister who'd terrorized my life. I saw someone small and broken, destroyed by her own greed and hatred. Later that evening, I received a call from the jail. Sarah had attempted suicide. She was under observation now, but the guards said she kept mumbling about being nothing and losing everything. I went to see her in the hospital wing. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, tears streaming silently down her face. When she saw me, she didn't show anger or hatred, just emptiness. "I lost everything," she whispered. "The money, my law license, my reputation, my children." Her voice broke. "Rich is divorcing me. He's taking the kids. Says he won't let them visit me in prison." For a moment, I saw a flash of the sister I used to know, before the pressure to be perfect, before the greed, before it all went so horribly wrong. "I tried to have you killed," she said, her voice hollow. "My own brother. Mom would hate what I've become." "Yes, she would," I replied quietly. It wasn't cruel, just honest. Sarah turned away, curling into herself. "I don't know who I am anymore. Without the money, the status, the perfect life. I don't know who Sarah is." I stood to leave, pausing at the door. Maybe that's where you need to start. Walking out of the prison hospital, I felt the weight of our family's tragedy. Sarah would serve 15 to 25 years for the attempted murder charges, plus additional time for the embezzlement. She'd lost her family, her career, her freedom, everything she'd valued more than her own brother's life. Mom's final words to me suddenly made sense. Sometimes the hardest thing is watching someone you love destroy themselves. You can't save them. You can only save yourself. I drove to the lake house, my lake house now, without any more legal challenges. Looking out over the water, I finally let myself cry. Not for the inheritance or the victory in court, but for the sister I'd lost long before any of this happened. For the family we could have been if greed and jealousy hadn't poisoned everything. Some might say justice was served. But sitting there alone, watching the sunset over the lake, it just felt like the final chapter of a tragedy nobody won.